Welcome back to Malik's Water Garden. In today's video, we're going to look at red lizard catfish, Rineloricaria species L010a red lizard catfish. Now, they are not Rineloricaria lanceolata, although a lot of literature might tell you that they are quite similar. They're a complete different species of their own. They could be a hybrid species between Rineloricaria types, but I believe that they're probably a species that got collected at some point, that got kept in somebody's aquarium, and they bred quite successfully because they are quite easy to reproduce, which is something we're going to look at in an upcoming video. So subscribe down below and hit that notification icon so you get updated when that video, as well as many other videos like that, get uploaded. Now, having said that, I believe that these guys got collected at some point in the past, probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they've never been collected since then, and we don't know where they got collected from. They're definitely a Rineloricaria species, but they're definitely not Rineloricaria lanceolata. I cannot prove that because I have not done DNA analysis, but I do have both species, and there is definite visible differences between the two. The size being one of them, the Rineloricaria lanceolata seems to be a little bit larger. Also, the Rineloricaria lanceolata has a more pointed dorsal fin, whereas the red lizard catfish, the L010a Rineloricaria species, seems to have a more rounded dorsal fin. They also seem to lack the coloration, which is not a good indicator actually for the most part, because I've had Rineloricaria lanceolata clutches of fry now, which all seem to be red as babies, and as they mature, some of them do turn more brown and like the parents, but a lot of them retain a lot of the red coloration, especially when we feed them a lot of the high intensity food that we have that has a lot of red pigmentation. They retain a lot of that red coloration. So coloration on captive bred animals, even wild caught animals, might not be a good indicator of species identity. Also, you don't want to have hybridization with these species, because if they are not related closely enough, their fry might not be genetically viable, which is something I believe is quite possible with these species, because they could be collected from complete different areas of the Amazon, although they look very similar and they are like quite similar looking, and they could probably breed and produce fry. The fry might not be viable and might not be able to produce the next generation. So this is something you really need to consider, because you want to keep these animals long term. You want to reproduce them. If you are a breeder, for example, you want to have your breed stock not end after your first generation. Then you want to breed animals true to its type, so that you don't end up with hybrids that you cannot reproduce the next generation from. It's a whole nother topic. We'll get into that on another video if anything, but for the purpose of this video, do not keep the red lizards, so your Rineloricaria L010a, with other types of Rineloricaria species, because they can hybridize and you will lose your breeding groups or your next generations, because you might be able to produce the first generation, but you will not be able to produce a second and a third generation from them most likely. So keep the species pure. Now, having said that, we don't know where these guys come from. We don't know who collected them. We don't know where they originate from or anything like that. And they are believed to be an aquarium strain at this point, and eventually somebody will find the original form somewhere in the Amazon, hopefully. And when we do, and we can correlate and look back at what differences the animal has gone through throughout its life of aquarium care. So that's a really good study, I believe, when it does eventually happen. And so for the purpose of this video, we're going to look at care and maintenance. And for temperature wise, they stay in relatively warm water, but you don't want to keep it too warm. I try to keep it below 82 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 27 degrees Celsius. So I keep it below 28 degrees Celsius, which is 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and between 24 degrees Celsius, which is 76 degrees Fahrenheit. So above 76 degrees Fahrenheit and below 82 degrees Fahrenheit. And they seem to do quite well in those temperature ranges, and they breed quite readily. The TDS at my aquariums are about 180 parts per million, and the nitrates are quite low. They seem to enjoy low nitrates. They seem to spawn when the nitrates are quite low. I've had quite a bit of success spawning them when I do large volume water changes and my nitrates drop to below 10 parts per million. So I really believe that clean water seems to be an important factor for them to spawn. Now, a lot of people say these guys need a high flow, and they do really enjoy flow. I've actually caught my males sitting in the flow of outflows of power heads and stuff like that. Females always sit on the water flow of where the power heads are. I've catch them all the time, and they quite enjoy it. And so you definitely want to provide some sort of flow for these animals, but they can live in tanks without power heads. I've actually had them in a tank. I actually have a male in the tank that's beside you right now. I'll put some B-roll of him, and there's no power head in that tank because it's quite warm, and the power head makes it even warmer, so I can't have a power head in there in the summertime. So no power head in there. But what I do have going on for them in that tank is high oxygen. So what matters is not the water flow per se, it's the oxygen saturation in the water. There seems to be a lack of understanding between the two, whereas people believe that when an animal requires flow, they just need to be bouncing around, and you want to have this wave maker pushing so much water on its face, and it's constantly bouncing and moving and hitting the walls of the tank and stuff. That's not what high flow means. High flow really just means that the animal requires high levels of oxygenation. It just translates into large volumes of oxygen saturated into the water column, so the animal can intake heavy amounts of oxygen without too much of an issue. Now, at warmer temperatures, the saturation of oxygen in the water also reduces, so you really want to compensate for that and increase the saturation of oxygen in the water by providing an air stone or additional filtration or whatever it is that you do to provide water movement. Now, having said that, if you don't want to use a power head because you don't want your fry to get sucked into your tank, that's completely normal. I don't actually use power heads in tanks that I have fry either. But what I do have is the air cranked up a little bit higher, so the water has a higher level of oxygen saturation. And I also keep my stocking density to a minimum so that there is not too much stress on the amount of oxygen that does get saturated into the water is not depleted by large consumers like cichlids and whatnot. So that's something to really pay attention to. And so have well oxygenated water and relatively warm. And TDS doesn't seem to matter. pH, I keep mine at 7.4, and it says online as well on many of the forums that I've read that the pH doesn't seem to be an issue for them, so you can keep them anywhere from like 6 to about 8. You don't want to go above 8, and you don't really want to go below 6, so keep it between 6 and 8. If whatever pH your tap water is in, it should be fine, unless you live in an extreme area where the pH is really low or really high. Now, even in those cases, you might want to use RO or add pH buffers like calcium carbonate or crushed up corals or whatever to bring up the pH if the pH is below 6. They do require sand in the aquarium. I believe they also require sand in their digestive systems. So mine are in sandy tanks, and I find them playing in the sand, half buried in the sand, digging through the sand. They definitely are hunters. They're not vegetarian or herbivorous animals. They definitely eat a large amount of meat. They are definitely a micro predator and probably insect larvae, small crustaceans. I catch mine eating baby Malaysian trumpet snails. They probably eat some of the shrimp fry, in the tanks that I have them in, and other stuff. They always dig through the sand bed, so sand is definitely important, and for their long-term health as well as I believe their digestive health, because they definitely seem to consume a decent amount of sand, which seems to help them with digestion and stuff. So that's something to consider. So diet. The diet for Rineloricaria in general, they're micropredators. They're definitely carnivores. They're not algae eaters. They have mouth structures on their mouth that are similar to the Pseudohemidon apitanos, and they dig through the sand bed for animals and little bits of food and whatnot. And I'll put some B-roll footage of the fry, the younger fry. They are definite predators. They definitely hunt and eat little baby brine shrimp. They don't eat anything that's not alive. I've noticed that I've tried to feed them, golden pearls, little dust and stuff. So that stuff is highly acceptable by a lot of my other baby plecos, and also a lot of the other fry that I have. Pretty much everything I have eats golden pearls, but the Rineloricaria lanceolata and the red lizards, Rineloricaria L010a, don't eat the golden pearls as readily. Like a few will eat it. So when you try to switch them over, you lose a lot of the fry, and I've lost quite a bit of fry in that regard. So we're gonna look into that in our upcoming video. So stay tuned for that. But as for the adults, they are carnivores. So I feed mine predominantly meaty food with a low fat content. You don't want to feed them with something with high fat because they definitely can suffer bloat. I do have remedies for bloat. I actually have treated my females for bloat before, and they definitely seem to react to the medication quite well. And it's quite easy to develop bloat for these guys too, because they really eat. So you cannot put too much food. So you have to really pay attention to how much food you feed them, and feed small amounts of high quality, high nutritious food. I also feed a little bit of veggies. They seem to enjoy spirulina tablets in terms of greens. They also enjoy Northfin kelp wafers. They also enjoy angelfins.ca Playco chips or catfish chips with hardwood in it. They also eat Sarah Welsh chips, which seem to be not enjoyed but accepted. But their favorite food in my fish tanks seems to be Nutrifin bug bites. This is not a paid advertisement, but Nutrifin, if you are watching it, send me some food, because I'm talking about your food all the time and I'm telling people to buy it, but you're not sending me anything yet. So you need to send me a big bale of food soon so that I can say this is a paid advertisement now. But it's not a paid advertisement, and I feed it to my fish and it stinks. It really stinks so bad that I actually wash my hands like 3 times after feeding it, and it's disgusting. Even after that, I can sometimes smell the after smell because I try to crush it with my hands for some of the smaller fish, and yeah, it's really bad. But my Rineloricaria seem to really enjoy the Nutrifin bug bites. So they seem to be an insectivore, so bug pie, any types of food that has high content of insect larvae and stuff like that seems to be ideal for them. But you can feed them other stuff as well. Tetratropical color granules, obviously they seem to like. Discus foods like Sarah discus granules, they seem to enjoy. So anything with a high protein content, low fat content, try to keep the fat content down, and try not to overfeed, because they're a small fish, and they do, in nature, these animals don't come across a lot of food. So when food is available, they can eat until their gut can explode to the point they're almost ready to pop. So you really don't want to feed them too much. So pay attention to that, and also pay attention to things like bloat. So feeding high quality food seems to be the trick, and feeding small amounts of high quality food seems to be the trick. So pay attention to that, and you should be okay as long as you're not excessively overfeeding. You can feed a little bit excessively, but what excessively overfeeding I find seems to be causing an issue is when you have them. For example, I had one of my females in the tank where I have my L340 fry growouts, and I was feeding quite a bit of Ebo aquaristic food, a lot of high protein food, but it wasn't the protein content, but it was just the amount of food that was going into the tank, and this girl was just chowing it down. So 2-3 weeks down the road, I didn't realize how much food she was consuming. The other day I look at her, and I kid you not, she was ready to pop. She was just, you could see how bloated she was. It was mostly food, but I was concerned. Moved her to another tank with the breeding females and the breeding male, El Diablo, and gave her some, let me show you, Metroplex. So I put a little bit onto my palm, and I put a little bit of Ego Aquaristic Hypancestrus paste, the algae paste, the spirulina paste. I put it in the spirulina paste, mixed it all up. Actually, let me make some for you guys so you can see. This is why I really like this stuff, actually. This is good for medication purposes as well as feeding fry and for feeding eldels. Also not a paid advertisement, but Ebo, if you are watching, contact me because I need your food, and it's really hard to get it. Like in North America, I'm having trouble finding your food, and I'm having to buy this from Germany, and shipping for these stuff is quite expensive when I'm buying small orders. So Ebo, if you are watching this video, contact me. So Ebo Aquaristic Hypancestrus paste, I take a little bit of that. So I'm actually gonna feed this to her right now, because this is like actually Metroplex. You guys know this stuff. I don't know if that translated really well on the camera, so I'll put some b-roll as well so you can see what it is. And it's made by Seachem. This is almost done, but I have another bottle. This is one of the medications I use in my fish room quite often. So see that? It's quite small amount. It says to use, the directions are in here. Use a half a full level spoon for I think 2 grams of food and mix it all up, whatever, right? But if for this application, I've used this since I was a child, quite experienced with this stuff. I know exactly how much I'm dosing, and it's just like a really small amount mixed into this much food. I just mix it all in. It's really good with this Evo Aquaristic paste because see how well it mixes. I don't know if that translated well, so I'll try to get that into B-roll as well. And I do that, make a little ball, and then literally put it in front of where the fish is. So I'll look for the fish in the tank. So let's look at that. So you can see her kind of behind that filter. And move the filter so she can do a little move for us. There she is. You see her? So she is quite bloated. I'll try to get better B-roll. But this is what I do. I just drop the ball of food in the general vicinity. I break a few balls and there you go, see? And she's gonna go eat that. And then give a little piece to the other female there, which she did not see. But let me take this piece and put it down here so she can get it. Right? So now she gets her medicated food. She sees she's already eating it. And she's doing much better today than she was a few days ago. So if you want a whole video, I'm actually making a separate video about breeding these guys, but also advanced care as well and other stuff like that. I can make a separate video about that. So comment below and let me know what you want to know in detail. And there's El Diablo. He's coming out to eat. There he is. So this is El Diablo. He's a monster and he's ugly. Look at him, he's ugly. He's not the prettiest fish, but everybody likes him, all the girls. He's the ladies' pick. So there's mate selection in these fish, definitely. So I'll try to document that on the breeding video, so stay tuned. Having said that, these guys are quite long-lived. They can live for between 10 to 15 or more years. In the right care, I believe they can live to about 20 years. The ones I have are about 5 years old, and they're spawning. They're older now, and but they're not old enough to like stop spawning, or like they're still at the prime of their lives. They're still doing great. So that's something, you know, in the right care, they can live quite long lives. So you know, they are an investment. They're not cheap for the nice red ones, the large ones, but you can buy small fry that are about that size for between 10 and 20 bucks each in Canada. So I bought my Rineloricaria lanceolata about that size for $8.99 each, and now they're worth $50 for the fish. I've actually gotten offers, you know, 100 bucks for the pair, and I'm not selling them. But my point is, as the fish gets larger, the price definitely increases quite a bit. But the small ones seem to be quite easily available and quite cheap because they are quite easy to reproduce. So it's a very fun species. I'm having quite a bit of fun with these guys. Something I really want to add to this video is that they are quite aggressive. This is not something that nobody talks about. So every literature that I've read says that they are peaceful, and that is bollocks. That's literal bollocks. Okay, I researched on these guys when I first got them about a year and change ago, and peaceful. My friend had the group for a few months in his 75 gallon, so I got them. They were doing great. They were in my tank for about 7 months through the whole winter until about January. They were all fine, and then I was missing 2 fish, so I was down to 11. I had 10 from him, and I had 3 that I was growing out, which turned out to be all males. And so I had 4 females, and the rest were all males. So 9 males and 4 females, right? Which is fine. I was completely happy with that, and I was doing great. Actually, my gold laser was spawning, so I'm kind of paying attention to that. Sorry. It's fun to see when your fish spawn. Anyways, having said that, so they were doing great, and then all of a sudden I'm missing 2 males actually. So 2 of the subdominant geriatric looking males. So I didn't really care because I had 9 males. Figured, you know, something might have happened. They gotten old. There were some that were quite old in there too, in the males. Some of the males. So there was 3 or 4 that were like, they looked geriatric. They just didn't look like the healthiest. So anyways, and I didn't care. So I lost the 2, whatever. Then I lost my second dominant male, which was larger and prettier. So he was a good looking fish. So I caught this as it happened. I caught my dominant male, which is El Diablo. That's how he got his name. And give him a thumbs up because he's a douche. He's really a douche. He kills my second dominant male. I caught him, couldn't do anything. Called my friend up in BC, asked her what do I do with all this wound, huge wound on the back, like destroyed its back. So there goes one fish. And by that point I realized they are aggressive, so I was like, okay. But then I thought, okay, the subdominant males that are still growing out should be fine, you know. So they were okay. So a couple of days go by, then he kills a subdominant male. He attacks him, and the guy got wounded. He didn't kill him actually. He just got really wounded. So I moved him into a breeder box, took the other subdominant male out, took the geriatric males out, you know, put them all in their own tanks. Everybody's doing great now. So the male plus the 3 remaining females, I had lost a female by this point due to spawning also, because they are quite aggressive during spawning. I'll put some B-roll. All the females want to spawn in the same cave with the same male at the same time. Talk about craziness, right? See, there's definite selection when it comes to mates with these fish. That's something a lot of people don't seem to understand. They definitely prefer some males over other males. It's not size, it's not the looks, it's not anything else, because El Diablo is the ugliest looking fish I have, probably. He's very ugly. He's quite ugly. His head is like disgustingly ugly. His bristles are like really ugly. He's ugly. He's ugly. Okay, and he's mean. He's so mean. So mean. And they love him. Like, lineup. I'll put some B-roll right here so you can see. There's a lineup of them trying to spawn with him. All 3 of them want to spawn with him. So him and the 3 girls were in the tank. Plus the 4th male, the sub male, which I thought was a female. So that's how I thought. That's how I had 4 females. So I thought one of the males was a female, and so cool. So I left him in there, thinking he was a female. So a couple of weeks go by, and I have footage of him at this point. I'll put it at the bottom. You can see him. He got destroyed again. So no males are safe in the tank when he's spawning, which is what I learned. No textbooks or videos or literature tells you this. So really pay attention to this, and you can only keep 1 male, dominant male, in a tank per tank, unless you have a really big tank. My tanks are 40 gallons, and I thought having enough caves and all this other stuff, all of my knowledge about plecos, throw it in the trash. Everything I've taught you guys about plecos, take all of that, wrap it up, and throw it in the trash, because these guys are completely different when it comes to this one particular area. Like, I'm good with dealing with aggression. I have fish that are quite aggressive. My L010a, quite aggressive. Not like this. Not like this. This is like a next level of aggression. So anyways, I just want to really quickly add that, and we're going to look at breeding these guys in the next video coming up. So subscribe if you haven't, because I'm going to talk about breeding them in quite detail, and we're going to get everybody to the level where they can spawn them quite easily, and you guys are going to be experts at breeding these after watching these videos. So subscribe and stay tuned for that. And as always, thank you so much for watching the video till the end. If you think there's anything else I missed, or if you want me to cover about any of this fish in detail, any other stuff, just comment below and let me know so I can make a separate video about it. As always, thank you so much. I love you all. I'll see you on the next video. God bless you.